From the very beginning of Iron Man all the way to Endgame, we've had primarily good movies with a couple of flops mixed in. And with this new phase, unfortunately, it has felt like there's been primarily flops with a couple good things sprinkled in. And this one was Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of Marvel's new movie, Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Before we get into that, I would just like to say a big thank you to everybody who has subscribed and liked my last video. I didn't really anticipate anybody watching my channel, let alone subscribing to it. And now, as of right now, we're at 481 subscribers, and I'm sure it's going to go up once this video is posted. So thank you, everybody. It's very appreciated. The beginning of this video, like usual, is going to be spoiler free. And then about the halfway point, we're going to move into the spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you can watch and then I will warn you when to click off. I won't be a menace and just drop a bomb in the middle of the video. So this movie follows more of Rocket's journey, and without giving anything away, you kind of get more of a background into how Rocket became who he is, and you get a lot of him as a little baby raccoon, which is so cute. And then it kind of moves into a new mission that the Guardians have to go through. They are building the planet Nowhere, and they are trying to make a new civilization there with a lot of displaced people and like refugees. And then a couple of bad things start to happen, where they have to go to a couple different planets, fight the bad guy. Do they win? Do they lose? Who knows? But what I will say is you have to see this movie. This movie is so good. This is literally what we've been waiting for with Marvel for the past 2 years, 3 years. Since Endgame, pretty much, we've been waiting for another huge, good Marvel movie, and this movie really delivered and we got it. So if you have not seen it yet, go buy your tickets right now and please go watch it. And if you didn't like this movie, leave a comment down below nicely about why you didn't like this movie, because it was just so good. I have been a Marvel fan even before the MCU. I grew up watching Fantastic Four and all the X-Men movies, and when Iron Man came out, Iron Man became my favorite Marvel movie. From the start of the MCU, I have loved it, and I have watched every single bit of content from the MCU and other like Sony, Fox, everything. And I feel like from the very beginning of Iron Man all the way to Endgame, we've had primarily good movies with a couple of flops mixed in. And with this new phase, unfortunately, it has felt like there's been primarily flops with a couple good things sprinkled in. And this one was a huge success, and they need to take notes. And if they need to change any of the future projects, they should do that, and they should use their money to make sure that each project is perfect from here on out, because this movie was so good. I don't even know. Like, I was speechless. When I left the theater, I wanted to go and buy another ticket to go see it immediately after. I will just give you kind of a brief why I liked it. I felt like the storyline was pretty good. Like, there wasn't really any big plot holes. Everything was fluid and fit together really well. The flashback scenes were good. They were absolutely heartbreaking. I cried 5 or 6 times during the entire movie, and there's one particular scene that I was bawling in. Like, tears were falling down my face uncontrollably, and I was like, wow, I'm really crying over some aliens right now. The acting, as always, is amazing, and it was super funny, heartwarming. It was really immersive. I was very immersed into this story, and I really don't have any qualms with this movie. I feel like everything just kind of lined up perfectly, and for a Marvel movie, this is exactly what we wanted and what we have been wanting for so many years now. I just wish everything else up to this point was so much better because I have just been so disappointed with Marvel with all of Phase 4 pretty much, except for WandaVision was pretty good, Loki, and I really liked Moon Knight, but all of the movies, other than this nostalgia of Spider-Man, of No Way Home, I think they've all been very, very disappointing, and I almost didn't want to see this movie in theaters. I was going to do what I did with Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Ant-Man and the Wasp, or Quantumania. I just wanted to wait till it came out on Disney Plus so I didn't have to spend my money on it. But I'm so glad that I spent the money to go see this in theater because it was worth it. I had a little bit of an issue with the CGI of Cosmo, the space dog, only because I felt like, why not just use a real dog? They could have used a real dog. They have a lot of dog actors that are good at hitting their marks and stuff. And the dog wasn't like speaking, it was just talking kind of like in the movie Up, had a collar that you could hear its thoughts. So I just felt like they could have used a real dog. But then after, when we were driving home from the theater, I was talking to my husband about it, and he said the character was so good and so thought out, even though the CGI wasn't the best, it wasn't super distracting. That was pretty much the only problem that I had with it. I actually really liked what they did is they had a lot of costumes in this movie, and you could tell a lot of them were costume prosthetics and like face makeup and a lot of practical effects, which was really cool. And the CGI was necessary CGI instead of just, we could do the CGI, so let's just do the CGI for convenience, basically. If you saw my Peter Pan and Wendy movie review, you know that I hated the CGI in that movie and it was a huge problem for me. And I feel like if Peter Pan and Wendy was actually like a good movie and had a good storyline, the CGI wouldn't have been an issue for me. The CGI wasn't super perfect, but like it wasn't Avatar Way of Water. Nothing will be, nothing is, but it was still so good and the story just made everything great. Anyway, this movie, it was quick. It was pretty quick paced. It was 2.5 hours, so pretty long movie, and it only felt like an hour and a half. You were on the edge of your seat like the entire time. But it also didn't seem like it was too short. From start to end was perfect, and it was so good. So my spoiler-free review, before we move on to the nitty-gritty of the movie, would be a 90 out of 100. And I'm so glad that I get to say that because everything up to this point has been like, give it a 50, a 20, you know, but this deserves a 90. And the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes was like a 96. So I think this is pretty fair and I think it was really awesome. If you don't want to be spoiled and you want to go see the movie, buy your tickets now, go see it. But if you don't care about spoilers or if you've already seen the movie, please continue watching. Editing me here. I am editing this video and the first take that I did, I actually didn't like it. So I refilmed all the spoiler portion of this. So if you see cutting from good lighting to bad lighting to me looking a little bit more tired than usual, that is why. They're filmed on the same day, but way far apart from each other. So, sorry, but I want to make it good for you guys, so here we go. All right, let's get into these spoilers. One thing that I really liked at the very beginning is, of course, the opening credit scene. At the very beginning, it shows Rocket as a little baby, and he's a cute little baby raccoon. But then it cuts to modern day Rocket, and it has that opening credit scene with the good music and walking through and having that beautiful shot of the environment and showing how the world is being built and how nowhere is becoming more of an established city. And the song is I'm a Creep by Radiohead, and it's just so good. I always just thought it was really cool how they had modern music or more pop music instead of just instrumental music. One thing that I really like about Guardians 1, 2, and 3 is their music choice, and they always have different songs throughout every single one to keep it fresh and interesting, and it doesn't get old. I think every single time that's something that everybody can agree with is that the music is amazing. But as Rocket is walking through the city, he goes into a little bar area to see Quill, and Quill is mourning the loss of Gamora. I feel like the tone of the entire movie was really sad and kind of, and then certain parts were pretty disturbing, which we'll get into. I think that this movie honestly is probably meant for teenagers and adults. I don't think that this movie is really meant for kids because the themes are so grown up, and I don't know if kids would really understand them. And also, there were some scenes that were kind of hard to watch and a little disturbing, which we'll get into later. So I don't know. If you have kids and you're wondering if it's okay for them to watch, it's up to you. But if I had a child, I probably would not have them watch this movie. I also want to talk about Adam Warlock. He's one of the Sovereign. He's like their protector. And I think he was supposed to be more of like a red herring because he didn't have that much of a purpose throughout it. But I think his character was still pretty funny. I just don't think that people need to get hung up on him as a character because he didn't really have that much of a purpose other than attacking Rocket at the very beginning so that you can kind of get more of an establishment of who the High Evolutionary is and who he has created. But other than that, he's not really that big of a character. And how I talked about earlier, the kind of scarier themes, Warlock chops off Groot's head and Groot turns into this weird spider head thing. It reminded me of It when Stan's head like falls out of the freezer and he like turns into the weird spider thing. It was like that. So that's why I'm saying like this movie was a pretty like it had scary like horror movie undertones to it. Something that is actually pretty cool and that I would really like to talk about is how the subtle acting work that was used throughout this entire movie I think was super strong. They didn't have to have a lot of talking dialogue because they just showed you everything that you needed to see. And I think every actor was really, really good at their job. I don't care what your opinions are of Chris Pratt in this movie. He did so good. You felt like you were going to cry when he started crying, and it was just beautiful. And you can really kind of see how ruined he is with Gamora not being with him anymore and the effects of losing her has had on him because he blames himself for Rocket getting injured, and it gets pretty emotional throughout the entire movie. I also think it's important to note that the flashbacks that we get with Rocket were so sad, but so good. I like that they did all the flashbacks throughout the movie so you can kind of get the full picture near the end. And each flashback just gave you something more and more to cry about. And they only show Rocket's friends for maybe 5 minutes of the entire movie throughout all these series of flashbacks. And near the end of each flashback, you grow to love each of those characters more and more. And it shows like the otter who has been tested on, a walrus, and a bunny. And the bunny is really scary looking. She has like this big muzzle on her with like sharp teeth. And she has 8 legs like a spider, like crawling around. It reminded me of Sid in the Toy Story movies when he like changes all the toys to be like demonic and scary looking. And you felt really bad for each of those characters, and specifically Rocket because that's the one that you see the most of. Also with the flashback scenes, I cried so hard when the High Evolutionary comes in and kills the otter whose name is Lila. That was so sad. And I just kept thinking to myself, am I really crying over a fictional otter right now and over a raccoon and a bunny and a walrus? Yes, I am. And I was sobbing. It was so sad. And when the guards of the High Evolutionary come in and kill the other friends, it was so sad. I like the last flashback scene a lot, and I was crying during that one as well when Rocket sees Lila again, and it's like heaven. And I was crying so hard. Again, over a raccoon. That's how good this movie was. Like, you got so immersed in it that you were like crying over a raccoon. Like I said earlier, I felt like the pace was super good, and even though it was a longer movie, it was quick enough that it kept your attention the entire time, but also long enough that you're not left wanting more. And I thought the storyline and how they progressed through each of the planets, Counter Earth, the planet with the big eyeball, that planet was super gross. Like, it literally looks like an eye and like all the organ parts of the eye. And so if you are squirmish, this movie is kind of gross and kind of disturbing.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like the biblically accurate angels, the
Oh,
one with
yeah.
the rings, like the eye with the
Yeah,
rings around it. That's what it reminded me.
Be not afraid or whatever. Yeah, but really real looking. Not just like an artistic ring. Like, it was like an eyeball with like rings around it. And like the
Meaty ring.
meaty rings. Yeah, it was so gross. Like I was talking about with the practical effects, when they go to that eye planet, I really liked that they were all costumes and they were all makeup, and the CGI just enhanced the scene and enhanced everything instead of being the default. Now, also the villain. I thought the villain was obviously demented and disgusting. He's this evil scientist man. He's corrupted by his own genius, and every scene with him in there, you just feel kind of ugh. And he looks kind of scary because his face is stapled onto like a metal thing. I think just he's diabolical. I really like how they showed the relationship between all of the Guardians. They are fighting a lot, and Mantis sticks up for Drax, and because Drax has always been kind of the idiot of the group, and Mantis sticks up for him and says like, but we love him. And she's fighting with Nebula, and Nebula gets this newfound respect for Drax when he speaks the language of these new species that the High Evolutionary is creating. Gamora kind of has this evolution as well of, I don't know who you are. I don't like you guys. I am not a Guardian. Who the heck is this tree guy? All he says is I am Groot. And then she evolves into like a hybrid of the two Gamoras that we know. She grows to have more respect for Quill as well as all of the Guardians. She understands Groot. And I think it just kind of brings a lot more peace to her character not being the Gamora that we know and have loved for so long. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion because I haven't seen anybody else's reactions to this movie, but I actually liked how Peter, Quill, and Gamora's relationship was in this movie. Of course, I wanted her to just fall in love with him all over again and then live happily ever after. But it gave a new story to Gamora that didn't have to rely on her loving Quill, I guess. And Quill constantly is just trying to get her to remember him and trying to get her to be this person that she used to be, or the person that he knows her to be. And she says, I am not that person anymore, and I have never been that person. That Gamora is a different, older version of me, and I will never be her. And I got chills during that scene because it was so heartbreaking for him, but also how is he supposed to just make her fall in love with him again, you know? Especially because we're not getting another Guardians of the Galaxy movie. So you can't, in one movie, you can't just have them all resolve everything. But near the end of that arc, it kind of had this admiration for one another and admiration for her being with the Scavengers and him being proud of who she is as this new Gamora. And it was brilliant. One thing I did notice that could have been a little bit better is Groot could have been in it a little bit more. I feel like he was definitely the background character in this movie. This Groot, he was just kind of there, and you didn't get a lot of scenes with him, other than he does save Quill from falling to his death and he turns into like an airplane, which was really funny. And he does attack a bunch of people. So he was there for like the necessities of getting out of danger. But I wish that we would have gotten one of those stupid group moments where he doesn't listen to a plan and he ends up almost ruining everything or almost blowing everybody up. Kind of wanted something like that, but it's okay. Other than that, the movie was great. Also, the humor through this movie. You cannot have a Guardians of the Galaxy movie without a lot of comedy relief. And even though the movie was sad and disturbing in some parts, they did not skip out on the humor and the chemistry between each of the characters. When they get too sappy, they always kind of have a little bit of comedy to relax you from the really sensitive topics that are going on. Listen, PG-13 movies are only allowed one F-bomb, and they used their F-bomb perfectly, I felt. It was just so funny. Quill is in a car and Nebula is trying to get into the car, and it's super old. It has one of those push button things that you have to push and then you can pull the car open. And she's like, I can't get it. And then he's like, push the button in. And she's like, okay, now what do I do? And he said, get in the car. It's so just, the whole theater just erupted in laughter. It was good. And I keep saying this, but like one of my favorite moments, they're all just so good and they're all my favorite moments, okay? Don't judge me, don't get mad. They're just all so good. Okay. But one of the really good moments was at the very end. Rocket is going to go and save all of the higher life forms, but then he stumbles on all the animal cages, and one of the cages is holding a bunch of raccoons. And when he opens the door, he sees that they are raccoons from North America, and he finally gets the realization that he is a raccoon. Because the running joke the entire time has been, I'm not a raccoon. I'm not a raccoon. What the hell is a raccoon? You know? And this was just like a great full circle moment. They just closed every gap that they needed to close, and they opened everything that needed to be open. It was just, it was so good. Especially because Rocket finally understands who he is and finally gets this sense of newfound purpose. And he is a raccoon. And they all kick the High Evolutionaries' butt. And again, they rip his face off and they show it, and it's really scary. So again, if you have children, maybe don't have them watch that part. But they also do that to the No Sleep Till song by the Beastie Boys. And it was just so good. Again, the music on each scene just fueled it, and it just made it so good. I know I've talked a lot about the underlying themes and the underlying tones of the movie, and that there's been a lot of them, but the main focus, I think, was definitely to find yourself and to overcome your challenges and accepting your past and accepting the traumas that you've had to live through. And it had getting over grief and getting over childhood trauma and like accepting who you are as a human being or whatever species you are. And that's why at the very end, everybody kind of goes their own way to find their new purpose, because they can finally move on from this limbo that they've been stuck in. They even show that a couple of times. They show Rocket scared when he is back to life, and he realizes that he has to see like the person that tortured him for so many years, the person that has lingered in his life and made him like so sad for his entire life. He actually has to face his demons basically, and he's not going to run away. And he even says like, I'm not going to run away from this. I'm done running. And then at the very end, Quill's like, I'm done running, because he's been running away from his past and his grandpa and his mom's death and Gamora, you know, and it's either been running away or having like bad ways of coping. We're going into like a healthy way of coping, and that's why he has to go home and see his grandpa so he can finally move on. And same thing with Mantis. She says like, I was just with Ego for my whole life, and then when Ego died, then I just moved on, and then I was a guardian, and I don't know who I truly am, so I have to find that. And then also with Drax, his underlying theme has always been missing and mourning his wife and his daughter, and never really being able to move on, and always trying to find justice for his wife and daughter. And once he becomes like a dad to these new beings, that was kind of his way of being able to move on from his past and overcome his demons, and he can finally like be a dad to somebody again, which was so good. Same with Nebula had her moment too. She wants to create a city and a place and a home for people that she never had. And Groot just is Groot, so we love Groot. And then Gamora, she needed a family and she wanted to find a family, and this is a different Gamora, so it's not going to be with the Guardians, but that's okay, and you kind of get this sense of peace for all of them. And I have no complaints. Like I said earlier, this movie was so good, and again, I would give it a 90 out of 100. So anyway, if you made it this long, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below of your favorite scene, as well as if you want me to review any other movies, please give me your suggestions down below. Thank you. Bye-bye.